Hey guys, according to Billy Mitchell, Karl Jobst is filing for bankruptcy after losing the lawsuit to Billy Mitchell. This is obviously devastating news for the Karl Jobst fans because bankruptcy is not a pleasant process. And it is a little ironic because Karl Jobst is talking about bankrupting Billy Mitchell when he himself got bankrupt. So as you know, he owes a lot of money. 700,000, about 700,000 Australian dollars is his own legal fees. And according to Karl Jobst, Billy Mitchell's legal fees may be even more than $700,000, where he's on the hook for. And damages are around 400,000 with interest and aggravated damages added. So we're looking at a $1.8 million verdict one way. And as I mentioned before, bankruptcy is probably one of the better looking options at this point in time. So let's talk about bankruptcy in Australia. It's not as easy as you would imagine it to be. So no response from Karl yet, even though Karl is obviously on the Discord channel monitoring his stands. You can perform a bankruptcy search here. There is a fee, 15 Australian dollars. And you get the results right away. According to the site, paperwork was submitted May 9th, 2025. So that was around the time that Karl was talking about bankruptcy jokes. At that time, I said it wasn't really a joke. It's something he seriously should consider. And it looks like he did. I am not able to provide a record to you due to possible privacy legal issues in Australia, but you or anyone can get it themselves for a fee if they wish. Before everyone loses their mind over this, in Australia, before you go bankrupt, there is insolvency. Insolvency is a financial condition, not a legal status. If your debts can't be resolved in insolvency, this means you go bankrupt. So it's the stage before bankruptcy. And shout out to the emailer. He knows who he is, and he's in the comment section. So maybe I'll pin one of his comments on the top of this video as well. So before you can declare bankruptcy, you have to prove that you're insolvent, right? That you don't have any money, you don't have any income. I think a possibility truly would be if the court deems that, the bankruptcy court, for instance, deems that Karl Jobst is a full-time YouTuber, which he said on multiple occasions, and his only asset is really his YouTube channel, then perhaps Billy Mitchell can acquire Karl Jobst's YouTube channel. That would be quite interesting. Now, you might think, oh, Karl will just make another one. The views are down, engagement is down, and yes, he could make another one, but given that the fact that many fans feel misled, is he really going to be able to start from scratch again and get to the place where he is today? I don't think so. It is devastating when you lose your channel. Just ask the completionist, even though he didn't lose his channel, he lost the fans that were associated with the channel. So insolvency is when a company or person can't pay debts when they are due. There are several options available to an insolvent company or person. The most common corporate insolvency procedure for an insolvent company are liquidation. The available personal insolvency procedures for an insolvent person are bankruptcy and personal insolvency agreements. Now, at this time, maybe this is just to leverage, right? Hey, Billy Mitchell, I don't want to pay you. I'm going to declare bankruptcy. You better give me a good agreement, right? A good settlement agreement. So this is the emailer again. Just to clarify the last email, what I'm saying from the evidence is that it appears Karl has at least filed insolvency paperwork. I'm not able to confirm at this stage if this was also bankruptcy paperwork or he has declared bankruptcy later on after this. So it is possible Karl has declared bankruptcy or Billy Mitchell is getting insolvency and bankruptcy mixed up. So of all the people who would probably be most aware of Karl's current status, being insolvency or bankruptcy, it may be Billy Mitchell, right? Billy Mitchell's son was very involved in the legal proceedings, and he does have a good understanding of the law. I believe he's a lawyer, so he probably would know the difference between these two items. So I do agree. Here is a website where somebody made about Karl Jobst, right? And it's not it's all his favorite sayings, I guess, right? My YouTube metrics will be bad for a while because some people are there to comment and not watch. AI never lies. Billy Mitchell. Oh, and there's some Billy Mitchell things. Karl calling the kettle black. Easy Escape's speed runs. So Easy Escape was on one of our live streams. And I have another email. It's a little bit more less based on facts I can check, but it does talk about the relationship between Apollo Legend and Karl Jobst being very bad. So I wasn't around at that time, and the information due to what happened to Apollo Legend is largely scrubbed off the internet. I would have to be relying on basically hearsay, right? People's accounts of what happened without, having the timestamp proof, which I don't feel comfortable doing because I don't think that's really good evidence to go on. Even though it would be very interesting drama evidence, it would be great for the channel. I'm not going to present that email. That email has made a few accusations about Karl and him essentially stealing Apollo Legends subscribers once he passed away based on, oh, I'm going to get Billy Mitchell now. I'm the legacy of Apollo Legend and so on. And that kind of catapulted his YouTube channel. There are videos and other detail. There's a video and there's another detail about it. It's kind of hard to verify how much of that is true and how much of that speculation. But that's, when you saw Karl and Camelot, I kind of understood, that this thing was a really, really bad interview. So here he's talking about the $700,000 in fees and Knott's paid around $300,000. I'm going to go and make a second video today, and it's going to explain why Karl Jobst has such high legal. So the question for any lawyer would be, how in the world are you going to pay $700,000 in legal fees and then your client literally goes bankrupt? So your client initially, his expectation is that he's going to bankrupt the plaintiff, right? So on one hand, he is talking about him bankrupting the plaintiff, Billy Mitchell, and then suddenly it gets like Uno reversed, and now he's the one who may be filing for bankruptcy, or at least from the paperwork, it looks like there's some type of insolvency going on. So this is a very dark tale of what happens when a billionaire funds your legal. You don't really care about money. And I don't think Karl has actually sat down and realized that at any point of the time, even before trial, even after trial, before the verdict, he was still making Billy Mitchell videos. I don't think he ever had like a come to Jesus moment where he sat down and said, what can I lose? How will this affect my family and so on? Another very interesting part that I want to cover in much greater detail is the interview on Camelot, where Karl gives a timeline, right? So Notch has agreed to pay, and he is paying for at least the first 3 months. Again, all of this is according to Karl, and it's on my previous video, so there is evidence of everything I'm going to say next, but I have to make like a really flashy, good video, right, to pull it all together. So Karl gets sued, right, for Apollo Legend. Notch comes in on Twitter, and Notch does not look like he's super engaged because after 3 months passes, the manager pulls a plug on it, and Notch says he's not aware. So then we had the GoFundMe. Then during the Camelot interview, congratulations, everybody, Notch is back in. My question to Karl is, how come you never contacted Notch when he pulled a plug, even just to thank him? So let's say Notch is paying your legal bills. He no longer pays your legal bills. Well, you got to reach out to the guy and say, oh, thank you for your help. I appreciated it. I found a great law firm because, you're a billionaire, and that allowed me to find the most expensive law firm I could possibly find, which then in theory, I believe is the best, legal team I can get. So from the very get-go, Karl had screwed himself because he thought the billionaire would have funded the entire thing. So he found the most expensive lawyer, or he found a very expensive lawyer that he was very proud of, given how much money he has to pay them. And that and again, all this is in the Camelot interview. It's all in the same interview, right? It's all, you can look at the interview and just listen to it, and it's basically Karl telling you why his lawyers are so expensive. So Knott's manager pulls a plug. He doesn't reach out to Knotts again for a year, 2 years, some timeline like that. He does a GoFundMe, raises $200,000, Australian, of course. I always have to say Australian dollars. And then after that money is raised, then he goes right back to Knotts and says, "Hey, Knotts, how's it going?" Oh, and then Knotts wants back in, and then that's what he says. So I do not understand at what point in time when this guy's paying your legal fees, why do you need a GoFundMe? Just go back to the guy and ask, "Hey, your manager has pulled a plug. I want to thank you for the help you had." And Knotts will go, "Oh, wait, I didn't know." Even today, Knotts is defending Karl, and this kind of defense would only indicate that he would have been willing to pay the entire legal fee. Now, would Knotts want to pay the settlement to Billy Mitchell? Probably not, because he probably doesn't like Billy Mitchell very much, right? And Knotts is, that's kind of a power play on Billy Mitchell, that you got a billionaire to pay you $400,000 plus $700,000. But at least the legal fees, right? At least the legal fees, and then perhaps the negotiations with the billionaire would have made the legal fees less, right? Because a billionaire has other stuff they may need help on, and you as a law firm understand you're going to take less money here to build a long-term relationship. There's a lot of strange things. And, Karl Jobst, the first fundraiser for David Race, it's not clear exactly where the other half of the money went. There are 2 updates. So 50,000 plus was raised, and there were 2 updates as to where money went, but they were only 13,000. So I'm talking about Australian dollars now, 13,000, meaning slightly, less than half were still remaining. And no one really, there's no update as to where it went. It's just the money ran out. Well, how was the money spent? So Karl knew he could raise a lot of money from his fan base, because he had already raised over $50,000 from his first GoFundMe for a legal defense, not his legal defense, that would come later, but for a legal defense for anyone that Billy Mitchell was suing. And then that really begs the question, why would you get yourself so involved in this, right? At that particular time, Karl was not being sued by Billy Mitchell, and yet he's still so involved in it, to the point that he's actually testifying that he's under oath in the American court system, saying that he's an investigative journalist, right? So on the Twin Galaxy case, you don't need to involve yourself in this stuff, right? If Billy Mitchell hasn't sued you, why are you so offended he sued other people? That's between those 2 parties, and to figure out a settlement between those 2 parties. My premise, and I'm going to make a longer video about this, is had Karl Jobst not had GoFundMe, had Karl Jobst not had Knotts, a billionaire, this case would have absolutely settled. I don't think at any point in time Karl really looked at it as his own money being at risk until it was too late. Because he always thought he would win. He was talking about having a grand gaming party and all this stuff. Even his GoFundMe, the assumption that at the very end that he made was, we're going to win, and when we win, the money will go to me, and I'm not going to refund you guys. I'm not going to refund you. I'm just going to hold a grand tournament in Billy Mitchell's name, right? That's his GoFundMe in a nutshell. So he was so certain that he would win and defeat Billy Mitchell, it never occurred to him that he could lose. His lawyers never told him he could lose. And to be quite honest, this is very scary that a lawyer would take this type of money and not prepare their client for the eventual outcome, because it is a outcome. Yeah, let me read you this. Naturally, the more money I am able to raise, the better my legal defense will be. That's just the way it works. If and when I defeat Mitchell in court, he will likely have to pay back a lot of the cost that I incurred. I will use that money to host a grand gaming tournament in his honor. Okay, so that paragraph is it kind of tells you that Karl, at this time when he was doing the GoFundMe, he's not considering he can lose. Look, man, if you get sued and then Knotts, a billionaire, is coming to you and saying, "Hey, I'm going to pay all your fees," there's no skin off your back, right? And then he says, "Oh well, then his Notch, his manager then pulls a plug because he or she probably realizes this thing is stupid. Why are we spending you know hundreds of thousands of dollars on this, right? Like, who is this guy?" And then the manager doesn't tell Notch. Again, this is according to Karl Jobst, and then Karl Jobst doesn't thank Notch. Karl Jobst is the type of guy that if you paid for his legal bills, he won't even contact you to thank you. Like, initially, again, it's a lot of money. It's 3 months of legal bills at least, right? That was initially paid up, especially retainer money and so on. A lot of it is, especially a law firm this expensive, they're going to want a large retainer. So this is a very bizarre, and the reason that it's so bizarre is I don't think Karl Jobst ever really needed GoFundMe money from his fans. I think he initially tested it with the first GoFundMe where he did raise $50,000 Australia. I'm going to say dollars, okay, $50,000, and he realized, okay, this is a way for me to get. Karl has always been about one thing. He's always been about money. And you can ask Karl this. Karl's been on the record multiple times saying it's all about money. It's all about money. It's all about money to Karl. And it makes sense, right? He has a wife who cannot work. I don't know what her visa status is, but the wife does not want to work or cannot work. He has a young family. He's got a young son. He recently purchased a home, right? He talked about that home. And more to the point, he's bragged about making 1 video a month and then living off that and making enough money, which I believe he has. So instead of actually figuring out the finances, actually sitting down and, just talking to your family, talking to, people who would know, like, I've been very neutral. I have no problem talking to Karl Jobst. Karl Jobst has commented before on my videos. Comment again. And, a lot of your fans have contacted me, particularly about, I guess, former fans about suing you, I guess. You have easy access to my email, my LinkedIn, my social, my contact information. I would sit down and tell you, hey, we need to settle this with Billy Mitchell. Yes, we lost, but there's still room for settlement because, again, it's too late now, but we could threaten an appeal. That could be a very big leverage. We could threaten bankruptcy, insolvency, and into bankruptcy. We could negotiate this thing out so we can go on a reasonable payment plan so it doesn't destroy our lives and we don't have to go to bankruptcy. Bankruptcy should be, considered like one of the last case scenario is bankruptcy, but it is a viable solution here for Karl's problems, right? And maybe we need to sit down and look at what the bankruptcy actually looks like and compare it to a payment deal that we could potentially get from Billy Mitchell and what that would mean by apology and so on. I don't think Karl's lawyers ever sat him down and had that conversation of like, what happens when you lose? What happens if you lose? Because if you have that conversation, you don't go to verdict. You go to settlement, and there's no reason. Look, I think I had to make a longer video because I have strong feelings about Karl's legal team and the injustice they have done to him. Is it malpractice? No, because this stuff happens every single Monday effing day. It happened to me, where a law firm is getting basically the green light. The law firm doesn't care if it's coming from Notch. If they hear a billionaire is paying our bills, yeah, they're going to charge you to the wazoo, right? Like this is pretty obvious to understand. If you are a law firm, a billionaire comes to you and say, "Hey, take care of my buddy Karl." What are you going to charge that billionaire? You're going to charge him $700,000, right? Because he can pay that. But then there's a GoFundMe element, which I don't think actually needed. He just needed to keep contact with Notch, not the manager, with Notch, right? Even at the very end, after Notch realized that Billy Mitchell won, and it was explained to him multiple times why Billy Mitchell won, it was about Paulo Legend not cheating, he still didn't give one F, right? He still stood by Karl Jobst's side and defended him as one of the good guys. So you're telling me that guy wouldn't have paid all the legal bills that you needed to file a GoFundMe because you felt maybe embarrassed or ashamed to go to Notch directly, even though you've done so before? right? So there's got to be some way Karl Jobst contacted Knotts directly, because then Knotts put him in contact with his manager. But how did the manager, and look, it's a very logical thing. I'm trying to explain this the most logical thing I can explain it. If you have a billionaire ready to go to war with you, and that billionaire one time, their manager says, "Oh, we don't want to pay no more," but they paid before, so they've clearly, they're invested. They have sunken cost fallacy. That dude, that Knotts dude, you need to call him. You need to email, however you contacted him initially. I would be contacting him every 12 hours until I got a response confirming that yes, he indeed pulled the plug. Even just to thank the guy, right? Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Can we talk about this? I want to run some things by you, and because that's a billionaire, right? And not just on Twitter a lot. He's not like he just disappeared for 4 years. He's been on Twitter this entire time. And even after the verdict, he's been incredibly supportive of Karl Jobst. You're going to tell me this guy is not going to pay the full bill? I don't believe it. I don't believe it, because he is an honorable person who said that he would pay the bill. That was the tweet. So you need to contact him again. And so Karl was a smart guy. You're telling me a year passes, a year and a half, 2 years passes, and Karl doesn't think about contacting Knotts again for money? Why have the GoFundMe? Like the reason to have the GoFundMe is you get to host that great gaming tournament. If you're so certain you're going to win, it actually makes more sense to have the GoFundMe, because maybe Knotts would want his money returned back, and maybe he won't. I don't know. But the GoFundMe money is definitely not being refunded to the people who donated. That money goes straight into your pocket, Karl, if you won. And knowing Karl, he really does care about that money. That's enough money to buy it. It's a very, very nice car, 2 very nice cars, maybe a new rendition to your home, $200,000. People have said, hey, gaming tournaments cost a lot of money. How do you even know there would be a gaming tournament? Right? How do you know if it would be a big gaming tournament, small? There was no details. There was no transparency as to like the quality, because there was no way to know how much money that quote would be refunded to Karl. Knowing Karl, he would have just kept the money if he won. That's all the research I've done, right? That's my opinion about Karl as the individual, right? He's made Billy Mitchell videos because they get more views than his speedrunning videos, and they bring in a different audience, and they've helped grow his channel. Yeah, anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This is obviously a longer video, but I hope to tackle the lawyers. Piss me off more than Karl. I tried to be as neutral as I can to Karl, but I've been very adamant that Karl's lawyers have absolutely taken advantage of him. Did they do malpractice? No. I'm not claiming they did malpractice. I'm not claiming they did anything illegal, but I want to walk you through like what they would be thinking at this time. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Bye, guys.